What's up, everybody? Welcome in. It's actually Victory Monday now. I did a Victory Sunday pod last night that came out, but now we're on the Monday. I'm Jacob at Roachism13, joined by the Browns Wire managing editor, Cory Kinnan. Cory, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing great, Jacob. How about yourself?
I'm fantastic. I just got to watch the Patriots lose in a way that the Browns haven't lost yet, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I've seen some crazy Browns losses in my lifetime, but the only thing comparable to that is I think it was 2016. I think it was 2016. The Will Hill blocked field goal against the Ravens that got taken back to the house when the Browns were setting up for a game winner. But I don't even think this scratches it. This was just pure stupidity like that. I don't think it scratches it. Just an incredible play by the Ravens like that. Yeah. It's wild.
Yeah, at least the block six is a thing that like happens. Like field goals get blocked. That happens. You don't throw a pass that gets intercepted by a defensive lineman that then stiff arms your quarterback into oblivion when the game was tied and you had absolutely no reason to do any of that. And yet here we are messing around and we're finding out. A buddy of mine said, I sent it to one of my buddies and he goes, well, it looks like he fucked around and found out. So here we are in that situation. So guys, we are excited. We're going to talk about some defensive tackle prospects. It's never too early to talk about the draft. So we are presented as always by our friends over at Homage Apparel. I've got my Browns homage on here. I'll have a link in the description down below. I think I like their shirts because they're just really soft and I like to sleep in them. So it's what I do.
They are very soft shirts. I do appreciate a good homage shirt.
Yeah, I've got a Cavs one coming to throw the hammer down. They got some AC inspired shirts that are coming up really good. Cory, let's start with you, man. We don't have to do this in any particular order if you don't want to. You don't have to go like 1 through 5. You can just do one of them, and we'll just kind of go through it from there.
Yeah, let's start at 1. I mean, the first 2 are really, we'll talk them out of a little bit, but unless the Browns make some drastic trade up for a defensive tackle, which is just not something I see happening, they're just fun to talk about, and that's about it. But I mean, one's Jalen Carter. There isn't any conversation. He might be the best player in the entire draft class. Out of Georgia. Just an incredibly dominant player, explosive off the ball, physical hands, can one gap, can two gap. He can do whatever you need him to do. Again, he's not going to make it past the 4th pick in the draft, probably 5th. This is probably his floor, So he's long gone. Again, out of a defensive line last year that saw the first overall pick come off of that defensive line and saw Jordan Davis come out of the defensive line. Jalen Carter still might have been the best defensive tackle on that defensive line. So he's just an incredible talent. He draws comparisons to Ndamukong Suh out of Nebraska the year he almost won the Heisman at defensive tackle. So it's not really a conversation. Jalen Carter is the best defensive tackle in this class.
Yeah, I think so, 100%. I knew you would go with him up top, so I went ahead and did my 5 just guys that I think will be Browns targets, and that way we can do that way we get more names out. That's what I kind of thought that we would be able to do. So I'm not saying this is the best. I just wanted to say that who I'm about to say is not the best D tackle in this class, but he's the one that I think, and I think you'll actually agree with me here, and it's Alabama's Byron Young. I think in terms of somebody that could be there for the Browns, the top defensive tackle maybe on their board, however you want to look at it. I think it should be him. We'll probably talk about the other guy that I think is like 1B right there that's kind of fighting with him probably here in a little bit. But Byron Young, for me, of the guys that could go outside of like Jalen Carter, those guys at the top, he's one of the only ones I think in the 2nd round, 3rd round range, wherever you think he's at, who is actually, I think, consistently a 3-down player. Like I think he can be a 3-down player. I'm not as maybe not right out the gate. I'm not as concerned about him being like a role player. I mean, you turn him on, it's Alabama. You turn him on, he just pops off the film. I think he's explosive off the line of scrimmage. I think he can anchor relatively well against the run. Maybe he puts on a little bit more size. I don't know, maybe more strength. Not that he necessarily needs it, but where we're at, I just think that if the Browns are going to invest high, I think it should be for a guy like Byron Young that I think can rush the passer. I think he can anchor the middle, and I think he keeps your linebackers clean. I think he's got really nice hands. I think sometimes his pad level maybe get a little bit high on him, but I mean, I'm not that concerned about that coming out of the SEC because he was productive there.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement. I've written on him ad nauseum. I love Byron Young. So again, I don't understand. A lot of the mock draft simulators still have him at around like the 95th, 110th, like right in that.
I saw him 159 on one today.
And I'm just like, are we not watching his tape? Are we like waiting until Dane Brugler updates his ranking for you to copycat? Or like what are we doing that this guy is still like a fringe top 100 player for you? Because again, from my eyes, and you can say my eyes are shit if you really want to, I don't care. But like from my eyes, like he's the best defensive tackle not named Jalen Carter or Brian Bursey in his class. So like I don't understand it. I think he's got some of the best hands in the class. You mentioned that. I think he knows how to use them. I think he has a wide variety of tools in his tool belt when it comes to how to use his hands and how to win off the edge and how to deconstruct blocks and get blockers out of his frame. He's unbelievably explosive. So like I don't get it. Like what are we doing here? So yeah, Byron Young is my DT3 as well. I hinted that Brian Bursey is my DT2 right now, but again, he's another guy who's probably going to be long off the board unless there's some sort of injury thing that comes up at the combine medicals or something like that. But Clemson's Brian Bursey would be my number 2. I guess I can go to my 4 then.
Let's do it.
We just hit that, and you already got my 3. You just hit my 3 there. So, and this is a guy I'm unsure if he's going to declare now. Like he's a redshirt sophomore, so there's a very good chance that he could declare. However, his defensive coordinator just took a head coaching job at Purdue, so might not be a bad time to make the leap. So Johnny Newton out of the University of Illinois, I think is a tremendous player. He's got a little bit of a squatty body type, so he is a little bit shorter. I think he's 6'2", 280 or something like that. So he's not tiny, but like his arms are on the short side. You can definitely tell. So he's not going to come in at 34-inch arms or anything like that. But he's slippery. He's a really good pass rusher. Really knows how to get after the quarterback. And again, his arms aren't ultra long, but he knows how to win with leverage. He knows how to keep blockers out of his frame. I think he can play from 3 tech all the way inside. I think he can even push out to some 4-eye, maybe even rare 5 tech looks. So I really like Johnny Newton. Really explosive player, really slippery pass rusher. Just a really good player who, again, he's only 20. Won't even turn 21 until August, I think. So like he could very easily go back to school, but he is eligible. And so I've got a close eye on him because I there's not many players I've enjoyed their tape more than Johnny Newton's this year.
He's definitely one that I saw you talk about, and that's why I watched him. And I was like, okay, yeah, all right. I didn't even realize until you just said that he was 20 years old, which is just, it checks all the boxes if he's there. It checks.
I was supposed to have an interview with him a few weeks ago, but Brett Bielema told him he couldn't do it until after he officially declared. So that was fun. Day of, I got told, like, no, you can't do that from his head coach. So that's fun. But
of course, always rooting all the good things, right? Yeah. So I'll jump to a guy because I was gonna go with Johnny Newton, but I'll skip to a couple of guys here as we just kind of run around. A guy I'm late on, I think, is Keanu Benton, and I thought that like he presents a really interesting. I don't know. He's very interesting because I don't know. I talked to Jack Duffin today earlier about do the Browns, are they even going to go after some of these bigger D tackles, or are they going to stick to the athletic guys that maybe can stop the run? Like, what are they going to do? So Benton might not be on their board for that very reason, because I think he's more of a run stuffing, like he eats blocks. Like if you just go watch Benton at Wisconsin, he just like, it's not flashy. It's not sexy. He does push the pocket a little bit up the middle, but like he just kind of stands there and he's always being double teamed. And he's just kind of like, he keeps your linebackers clean. Like he kept the linebackers clean in Wisconsin. And that's just exactly what Cleveland doesn't have at that position. And we've got these smaller athletic linebackers. And you're like, well, we really need someone like that up front if you're going to employ those style of run linebackers. And I think like he's got some nice movement. I saw him put a little swim move on a couple of guys on a pass rush that I thought was like not fair for a guy of that size, but he lines up over center a lot. He like directly over center a lot and takes on either the right guard or the left guard with the center. And he just kind of is there. He's in the way. We've seen the D tackles in Cleveland kind of go apart like the Red Sea, and quarterbacks step up and throw or step up and run depending on who you're facing. And Benton just doesn't allow that sort of stuff with his size, and it's just his lower body and the power down there to anchor in the middle.
Yeah, he moves really well for his size too. So I think there's a chance he could be a better 3 tech than he is at 1 tech, where Wisconsin plays him a ton, because he does, and he has 34-inch arms. So he's got long levers and he knows how to use them. I think his pad level at times gets a little bad, but he moves really, really well for his size. So I think he's going to go test well at the combine. But Benton, I think, will firmly be on their board. Benton falls into like, I have a category of defensive tackles. And I have one guy before I get in that category of like guys who are really high on like consensus boards that I'm just like, like you can interchange these guys in like around the comp pick range, top 75 comp pick range. And like, I'd be okay with any of them that haven't really stuck out the way that, like the guys at the top have. Like Byron Young, I think is firmly better than that tier, even though he's way below them in most consensus rankings. But I'll talk about Mozzie Smith next. Mozzie Smith is my DT5, so he comes in after Newton for me. He's got some stuff going on, so I don't know if you saw, but like a couple weeks ago, Mozzie Smith, came out that he had gotten arrested for a felony gun charge, and he in like I think it was like early November, so like it's been a little while. He's still playing through it, but so there's that to kind of consider. When you're talking about Mozzie Smith. But again, he was the top player on Bruce Feldman's freak list that he puts out every single year, the top player. So the most athletic guy in the country, potentially, most athletic player in the country, potentially. And he's going to test off the charts at the combine, which, that should be like ding, 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 ding when we're talking about Browns prospects, because obviously they have some pretty obvious guardrails. But I thought his tape has been a little bit better this year too. Coming into it, I was like, Mozzie Smith, like, yeah, that's great that he does all this stuff, but it doesn't really show up for me. But I've seen some pretty freaky things on tape this year from Mozzie Smith now, to the point where I say, that amount of athleticism plus kind of what you're showing. Like, I've seen him take the outside track and play like outside of his frame. So like, it's pretty rare for a dude his size to be able to bend like that, playing outside of a tackle's outside shoulder. So, so things like that I've seen from Mozzie that are like, I see the pathway here. So again, I would still say he's, a top 65, top 64, 65-ish player. I don't know if I would take him in the second round. He's probably going to go in the second round because NFL teams love dudes who test off the charts. But Mozzie's definitely my number 5. And he does some really nice things that I can see, like, okay, I see the pathway.
Yeah, I think that, like, kind of you mentioned some refinement here and there he needs, but if he gets it, I think it's like one of those things where you're like, oh, so that's what you can do when you have that level of freakish athleticism and tools, kind of like I think Alex Wright will eventually develop into, because I think it's kind of somewhere around there. And
he kind of reminds me a little bit of like Larry Ogunjobi out of Charlotte. So when Larry Ogunjobi was drafted in the 3rd round, and he never panned out for the Browns, but finally year 5 came around for him, and it's like, where the hell was this guy? Like, where was this guy? It's kind of like that a little bit for Mozzie Smith.
So I got one. This guy's a little bit further down on my list overall, but I think that should the Browns kind of pass up earlier, I just wanted to mention this guy just because that's what, I don't know, I just decided to. Colby Wooden from Auburn. Or Wooden, I'm sorry. And I think he's really interesting at 284. He kind of fits the mold of of the pass rushing D tackle that they're trying to find, probably a role player. I think you could take him somewhere day 3 and get a nice role player. I think he definitely needs more size and strength, like if he's going to play inside. But Auburn did slide him out on the edge a few times, not a few times, but often in some of these games, and he did rush from the outside, which I know the Browns love to use that sort of thing and get these inside outside versatility players. It's his athleticism that is what he wins with. I think he's got decent hands, but he plays too high a lot. But he does this like do-si-do swim move where I watched him this was last year against Penn State, where a couple of times they didn't get a hand on him. He just kind of burst off of it, just kind of swam past them, and they maybe, touched him as he went by, and he had a free run at Sean Clifford. And I think he was so excited to get a free run that he missed the tackle, but he was back there. He was in the spot. And he's able to kind of duck through some blocks and do some things like that. And he's kind of steps off with explosion off the line. And he's really long. I don't think I have it here about his arm length. I don't have any of the measurables here that I can see, but one of those interesting things when he gets to the combine to see where the athleticism actually lines up. But I think he's more of an athlete than he is anything else. And I think if he gets a little bit more strength, I think he could be really fun.
He's an interesting player. I like the edge rusher, Derek Hall, as well. That comes out. That's coming out of Auburn this year. He's a really explosive pass rusher. So I'm a big fan of Hall. And I've seen Wooden's tape. I think he probably is going to fall to day 3 just because I have questions of like, is he explosive enough to, or is he physical enough to win inside?
Yeah.
And is he explosive and like flexible enough to win outside? You know, he's kind of that tweener that I'm like, where do you win? How do you win? Yeah. Where can you win consistently at the next level? Next guy I've got is Javon Dexter out of Florida. Dexter again is going to go higher than I have him ranked. I just know that it is what it is, and it's because again he's a freak. He's a freak athlete. Like the one thing when you watch Javon Dexter's tape is you can see the pop in his lower half. You can see the explosiveness that he plays with, and the punch, how that translates into his hands. Like he plays through the hips. Dexter's really his tape is so inconsistent though. Again, he's a young guy, so you know he meets that guardrail, and the Browns are gonna have him on their board for sure. I don't always think there's urgency off the ball, off the snap. From a down-to-down basis, especially against the run, I'm like, are you engaged? Are you there? I think his pad level's a little high, but there's no doubting the traits. There's no doubting that lower half explosiveness and the upper half, like the hammers he wields with his hands. Like it's there. I still don't know if he knows what to do with his hands yet either. So, again, he's a guy that you're going to draft because he's young, and a guy that you're going to say we can coach this up because the tools are all there, but it's not there on tape yet.
No, I was going to say I watched him a little bit, and he just disappears at times. Like I think it was LSU. I think it was the game against LSU this year. It might have been last year, but there was a stretch where exactly what you said. Is he engaged? Because he was just there. He was just kind of there, and he got driven back. He wasn't getting really badly driven back, but it just didn't seem like he was very, I don't know if it's just young, undeveloped, that sort of things. But yeah, he's kind of a guy that's really, I'm not sure where he falls overall. But you're right. He's probably going to go test out of his mind, and then they're going to be like, let's take him in the top 50, and then he's not ready necessarily, and then it just becomes this big mess. So my last guy for this, I got Siaki. Here we go. Ikem. Did I say it? Ika?
Yeah, you sure did. You nailed it.
Woo! We're doing now. This dude is a unit. Like my God, at least 6'4", and the thing that I saw, Baylor's official put him at like 357. And I believe it. Like this dude. And I don't know. Again, we talked about this. I'm not sure if the Browns will go after that type of defensive tackle, but he's not exactly non-existent in the pass rush game. I mean, he can get at the rusher a lot better than the passer a lot better than I thought he would be able to at 357. But like, he's going to push that pocket up the middle. He is going to push the pocket up the middle. Rather, he makes the play or not. Again, the Browns don't have anybody that pushes the pocket consistently up the middle. And, quarterbacks slide up to throw or slide up, run out, and take off for 50 yards or whatever they want to do. And I just think he sets that middle there. He just sets the anchor. It's not glamorous. You're not going to turn it on and see like 2 sacks and those sort of things. But like, I did see him chase down a sack like 10 yards deep where the running back or the quarterback was just rolling, and he kept up with him at 357 and took him down. So like, it's not like he can't rush the passer at 357. It's going to be like low, like how often can he be? I don't know that he's a 3-down player early on, but like if you're looking for a dude that is just a massive unit, you're like, you know what? Not going to run up the middle. I think Ika might be the guy for that.
He's a big dude for sure. He's a unit. I like Ika a bit. Ika, so I was talking about that like mid to late 3rd round range grade wise. Like Ika, people, the NFL loves him. I get it. But like, I'm going to grade a little bit separate from that of what I see. And like Ika, Benton, Dexter are the 3 guys in that like interchangeable range. It's like, yeah, you could give me any of these guys in that range. I'd be okay with it. But like, if you take one of them way before, like at 42, that's where I'm going to be like, yeah, I think that's a little too rich. So I do like Ika. Where I kind of see problems with him is like in the phone booth. So yeah, he's really good off the line with that first step and with shutting that block. But when he's squared up on a ball carrier, he really struggles to shift direction and kind of bring that ball carrier down. And then I feel like he plateaued this year. Like I watched his tape last year, watched his tape this year, and I'm not sure if I've seen development or I've seen improvements. He's a good player. There's no doubt he's going to go to Mobile. I've heard he's going to test pretty well for being 357. So, which is fun. Ika was my number 5 guy as well. So, I'll just mention another guy because then Benton is 6 right after that. So, you know, coming down through there. But I'm going to mention Clemson's Rook Ohorhoro, I think is how you pronounce his name. So, unbelievably good run defender. He's a 4th-year senior, so he's still relatively young. You know, no extra years of eligibility there. Really long arms, I think 33-inch arms. So and he plays with really good leverage, really good pad level, anchors and doubles so well. So just a sound gap defender. Who's going to keep linebackers clean. He's not physically imposing. He's not a big dude, but he plays with leverage and he knows how to dig his heels in. Still needs to develop I think he's probably a two down player early in his career. But, you know, if we're talking that comp pick range or we're talking early 4th round range, then yeah, but give me that guy. Like, give that guy on my team. So that's great production out of a fringe 100 to 115 pick, you know? So
yeah.
I was really impressed by his tape. I think he's probably going to test pretty well too, but overall it's a pretty good tackle class to need a tackle in. So
I mean, I've talked about this. I'm sure you've talked about it. I've seen you say some things about it on Twitter and stuff like that. It's so drastically different where we sit right now than the class was last year, where it was kind of like Jordan Davis and then and Wyatt was up there in some people's cases. And then for the most part, it was just a bunch of dudes after that. Like, it was just, and where did they go? Like, as we were early on in the process, where did they fall? Like, I'm looking at all of these guys that we've talked about potentially going as the latest early day 3. I think a lot of these guys, I think you're going to get a lot of these players in the first 3 rounds of the first 2 days. Like, whereas last year I was just you look at it, Perion Winfrey going into like the draft cycle, at least it felt like was one of the higher dudes on a lot of people's boards once you got into like the 2nd and the 3rd tier of players. He ends up going to the 4th round. I think it's like significantly better.
MVP. He MVP of the Senior Bowl. Like, yeah, people I mean, there's a lot of reasons to love him in a vacuum with the 34. He's built like an ox, 34-inch arms, really explosive, really physical. But there's also some reasons why he fell as well, which we've seen in Cleveland. But yeah, this class is a very good class of defensive tackles. So I wouldn't be shocked even if they double dipped. You know, if they took one 2nd, 3rd round range and came back and got another one 5th, 6th, somewhere around there. I wouldn't be shocked by that. I think
one day 3-1. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I think there's a real chance that Perion Winfrey is the only defensive tackle back in the room. I have been open about it. I would be open to Taven Bryan back on a rotational basis. I think he's shown some things as a situational pass rusher where I would say I could see that guy as your 3rd, 4th defensive tackle. Yep. Outside of that, I mean, Jordan Elliott's got 1 more year on his deal left. I think he's going to be scratching and clawing for a roster spot. And then after that, it's like, okay. Ben Still played 6 snaps. I don't think Ben Still is going to make the roster by the time camp's over next year. So there's a chance Perion Winfrey is the only defensive tackle in this room back.
He's probably the only one that I feel comfortable saying is close to a lock, and that a lot of that has to do with the contract. I would agree. Taven Bryan and Perion Winfrey played really well last night. They both played pretty good overall against the Ravens. One guy I wanted to throw out there and see if you had some thoughts on him before we wrap this thing up. Like if you're double dipping somewhere in day 3, have you watched much of Carl Brooks from Bowling Green yet? But like, he's a little bit smaller than the 280s, this sort of range, and I know he's in the MAC, but that he can get to the quarterback. He's got some explosion, some nice pass rush moves.
He leads the nation in pressures. Yeah, out of Bowling Green. He's a good player. He's older, but we've seen that the Browns bend those age guardrails, in the later rounds of the draft. Like, they drafted Isaiah Thomas, who's 24, so in the 7th round. So I think he's probably going to go in a range where the Browns won't feel comfortable drafting him. I do think he's probably going to go day 2. The NFL does and he's going to go to the Senior Bowl, and I think he's probably going to do well. Body type wise, you're right. He is a little small in that 270-ish range. I think his arms are only 32 inches, if I remember from the Blesto Scout from the summer where they give out measurables and grades on guys about preseason. So I think he's only got like 32-inch arms, but I think, those pressure numbers are enticing. His tape's pretty good. Against MAC competition. I did try to watch they played UCLA this year, and they played another Mississippi State, I think. So I tried to turn those games on, and those were the games where it's like, where is this guy? But I do think his numbers are good enough, and he's going to test well, and I think he's going to have a good week at the Senior Bowl, where I think he probably goes top 100.
Wow. I really like that. I got to watch him. I work for Ohio University, so I got to watch him a little bit. And Ohio and OU has a relatively decent offensive line in terms of, MAC wise. And he was the reason it didn't go, they didn't contain him as well as they thought they were going to in that game, though they still won it. But I always think it's really nice I try to see as many of these players as I can with the mid-majors when they come into Athens, so I can try to do that.
But there's always a chance he gets slipped. Like last year, I think Dane Brugler, I had Dominic Robinson out of Miami of Ohio graded as a top 100 player. Mm-hmm. Dane Brugler had him as top 100 player. He went in the 6th round. So you never know out of Miami of Ohio last year. So you just never know with these things. But I tend to think he's probably going to go top 100, but who knows?
I mean, could say, I think same situation with Isaiah Thomas. I had him a lot higher than 7th round. When they took Isaiah Thomas, that one was really interesting because I was like, wait, Isaiah Thomas is still on the board? I didn't even realize the guy was still out there when they ended up taking him in the 7th round. Cory, I really, really appreciate you taking your time real quick before we jump off here. Tell everybody where they can find everything.
Yeah, again, I do a lot of work on my own Twitter. That's where I'll post a lot of clips at Real Cory Kinnan. Again, I'm the managing editor at the Browns Wire, so all of my written content on Browns related, I put some draft stuff on there as well at Browns Wire. And then I also have a Substack where I have a draft podcast that me and my buddy Devin Jackson have recently started releasing episodes on. And then I have just a couple draft related pieces. Like I have a film room from CJ Stroud against Notre Dame, and my interview with Penn State left tackle Olu Fashanu, who I think would have been a top 10 pick this year, but decided to go back to school. I got to sit down and talk with him, so I wrote that up and put it on my Substack as well. But Browns Wire and my Substack are pretty much it. But yeah, it's been a pleasure.
All right, man, I appreciate it, guys. We will see you guys next time. As always, go Browns.